The medical bay of the starship Serenity's Promise was quiet that night. Only the soft hum of machines and the gentle beeping of monitors filled the air. Nurse Vela walked between the beds, checking on patients who slept under dim blue lights. She was young for a Theshan, barely past her training period, and her blue skin still had the bright shine of youth. Her four-fingered hands moved carefully as she carried her medical tray from bed to bed. Vela had been working on this ship for only 6 months. The Galactic Union employed thousands of species, and she had studied hard to learn about all of them. But some species still confused her. Some species were so strange that even her teachers had admitted they did not fully understand them. Humans were one of those species. She stopped at bed 7 and looked down at the patient sleeping there. Commander Marcus Chun was a human male, somewhere in his middle years. He had been brought in 2 days ago after a pirate attack on his transport shuttle. The pirates had shot him twice and left him floating in space for almost an hour before rescue ships arrived. Any other species would have died. But Marcus Chun had survived, and now he was recovering faster than the medical computers had predicted. Vela checked her datapad. The screen glowed softly in the dim light, showing her the treatment schedule. Patient 7 needed an injection of compound, Theta 7. This was a standard medicine that helped cells grow and repair themselves. It was safe for carbon-based life forms like humans, Theshans, and most other common species. She reached into her medical tray and pulled out a small glass vial. The liquid inside was clear with a slight blue tint. She loaded it into the injection device and pressed it against Marcus Chun's arm. He did not wake up. The device made a soft hissing sound as it delivered the medicine into his blood. Vela smiled to herself. Another patient treated, another task completed. She was about to move to the next bed when her datapad made a sound she had never heard before. It was a harsh, angry beeping. Red lights flashed across the screen. She looked down and felt her blood turn cold. Warning: incorrect compound. Administered. Patient received compound ZETA7. Required compound was THETA7. ZETA7 is toxic to carbon-based organisms. Fatal dose delivered. Estimated time to organ failure: 10 minutes. Vela read the words 3 times. Her hands began to shake so badly that she almost dropped the datapad. Compound Zeta-7 was used only for silicon-based species like the Corvite. For carbon-based species, it was poison. It would break down cells from the inside, turning organs into liquid. It was one of the most dangerous substances in the medical bay, and she had just injected a full dose. Into a sleeping human. She looked at the vial in her tray. The labels were so similar. Theta 7 and Zeta 7. The colors were almost the same. In the dim light of the night shift, she had grabbed the wrong one. Her secondary heart stopped beating for a moment, then started again with a painful thump. Her primary heart raced so fast she could hear it in her ears. She was going to kill this man. She was going to kill a patient. Her career would be over. She would face criminal charges. Her family would be shamed. Everything she had worked for would be destroyed. Marcus Chun opened his eyes. Vela made a small sound of terror and stepped backward. He blinked at her with confusion, his brown human eyes focusing slowly in the dim light. "Hey," he said. His voice was rough from sleep. "Everything okay? You look scared." Vela could not speak. Her translator unit made a strange buzzing sound as it tried to process her panicked thoughts. She stared at him, waiting for the first signs of pain, waiting for him to start screaming as his organs began to fail. "Please," she finally managed to say. Her voice was barely a whisper. "Please don't inform anyone." Marcus Chun frowned. He looked at the injection site on his arm, then back at her face. "Inform anyone about what? What happened?" Vela could not answer. She just shook her head, her eyes filling with tears. In her mind, she was already counting down the minutes. 10 minutes until organ failure. She had maybe 5 minutes before he would start feeling pain. 3 minutes before internal bleeding began. The minutes passed. Marcus Chun continued to look at her with confusion. Then he yawned and rubbed his eyes. Seriously, what's wrong? You look like you've seen a ghost. 5 minutes. No pain, no screaming, no blood. I feel fine, he said, scratching the injection site. Actually, I feel pretty good. A little itchy right here, but that's normal, right? Vela stared at her datapad. The warning was still flashing, still telling her that her patient should be dying. The medical computer had no explanation. The data made no sense. 10 minutes passed. Then 15. Then 20. Marcus Chun did not die. He did not even look uncomfortable. He just watched Vela with growing concern, clearly worried about her rather than himself. Okay, you're really freaking me out now, he said. Should I call someone? Do you need help? Vela finally found her voice. You should be dead, she whispered. Marcus blinked. Excuse me? The injection. I gave you the wrong medicine. It should have killed you in 10 minutes. Your organs should be failing right now. You should be in terrible pain. She watched his face change from confusion to surprise to something she did not expect. He looked almost amused. Huh, he said. Well, I feel fine. A little hungry, actually. Is there any food around here? Vela did not know how to respond. She had just confessed to poisoning a patient, and he was asking about food. Her entire understanding of medicine, of biology, of the universe itself seemed to be crumbling around her. I don't understand, she said. This is impossible. The compound I gave you would kill any carbon-based life form. It has a 100% fatality rate. There are no exceptions. Marcus Chun smiled at her. It was a strange, gentle smile that made her feel even more confused. Well, he said, I guess humans are the exception. Then he closed his eyes and went back to sleep, leaving Vela standing at his bedside with shaking hands and a mind full of questions that would take her years to answer. She did not move from that spot until her shift ended. She watched him breathe, watched his heart monitor show steady beats, watched the impossible happen with every passing second. The human did not die. And Vela's whole understanding of the universe changed forever. For the next 3 days, Vela spent every free moment studying Marcus Chun. She took blood samples, ran scans, and analyzed data until her eyes hurt from staring at screens. She worked during her breaks, during her meals, and late into the night when she should have been sleeping. What she discovered changed everything she thought she knew about biology. Marcus Chun's immune system was like nothing she had ever seen. When the Zeta-7 compound had entered his bloodstream, his body had responded within seconds. White blood cells had surrounded the toxic molecules like tiny soldiers attacking an enemy. But they did not just destroy the poison. They studied it. They learned its structure. They figured out how it worked, and then they did something impossible. They took the poison apart and rebuilt it into something useful. The Zeta-7 had been designed to break down organic cells. But Marcus's immune system had reversed the process. It had turned the compound into a healing agent. The very thing that should have killed him had instead made his cells stronger. Vela sat alone in the laboratory, staring at the data on her screen. Her hands were shaking again, but this time it was not from fear. It was from excitement. She began searching the Galactic Union's medical database for other examples of human survival. What she found made her shake even more. There was a human who had been lost in a frozen wasteland for 5 days without food or proper clothing. His body temperature had dropped to a level that would kill most species. But when rescuers found him, he was still alive. His body had slowed down its own functions to conserve energy, like a machine switching to low power mode. He had lost some fingers and toes to frostbite, but he had survived. There was a human who had been attacked by a wild animal on a colony world. The creature had torn open her stomach and left her bleeding in the dirt. She had walked for 3 hours to reach help, holding her own intestines inside her body with her hands. The doctors had expected her to die on the operating table. Instead, she was back at work within 2 months. There was a human who had eaten poisonous plants on an unexplored planet. The plants contained chemicals that paralyzed the nervous system of every known carbon-based species. But this human had only experienced mild stomach pain and a headache. When scientists studied his blood, they found that his liver had produced new enzymes specifically designed to neutralize that particular poison. Vela read case after case after case. Each story was more incredible than the last. She found a scientific paper written by a Kavati researcher who had spent her entire career studying humans. The paper was titled Persistence Hunting and the Evolution of the Ultimate Generalist. Vela read it 3 times to make sure she understood. The paper explained that humans had evolved on a planet called Earth. This planet was classified as a Category 7 death world. It had extreme temperature variations, frequent natural disasters, and millions of species of predators, parasites, and pathogens. Most intelligent species in the galaxy had evolved on much safer planets. They had developed specialized abilities to deal with specific threats, but humans had evolved differently. They had not become specialists. They had become generalists. Instead of developing one perfect defense against one type of threat, humans had developed a flexible defense system that could adapt to any threat. Their immune systems could learn. Their bodies could adjust. Their cells could change and grow in response to damage. The paper used a phrase that stuck in Vela's mind. Humans do not survive because they are immune to danger. They survive because they refuse to accept death. This was not just biology. This was something deeper. It was a kind of stubbornness that was built into their very cells. Vela thought about Marcus Chung, sleeping peacefully in the medical bay after being injected with a lethal poison. She thought about all the other humans in the database who had survived things that should have killed them. She began to understand something that no amount of medical training could have taught her. Humans were not like other species. They could not be treated like other species. The normal rules did not apply to them. She needed to tell someone about this. She needed to share what she had learned, but she was afraid. If she shared her research, she would have to explain how she had started it. She would have to confess that she had given a patient the wrong injection. Her career would be over before it truly began. She was still sitting in the laboratory, struggling with this decision, when the door opened. It was Dr. Verith, the ship's chief medical officer. He was an old Dacian with faded blue skin and wise eyes. He had been practicing medicine for over 100 years. "Nurse Vela," he said, "I have noticed that you have been spending a great deal of time in the laboratory recently. May I ask what you are working on?" Vela's heart began to race. This was the moment she had been dreading. She could lie, make up some excuse, pretend that she was just studying for future exams. But she was tired of the secret, tired of the guilt. "I made a mistake," she said quietly. 3 days ago, I gave a patient the wrong injection." Dr. Verath's expression did not change. He simply nodded and waited for her to continue. "The patient was a human. Commander Marcus Chen. I accidentally gave him compound Zeta 7 instead of Theta 7. According to every medical textbook, he should have died within 10 minutes. She paused, gathering her courage. But he didn't die. He got better. And I have been trying to understand why." Dr. Verith was silent for a long moment. Then he walked over to her workstation and looked at the data on her screen. "This is remarkable research," he said finally. "Very thorough. Very detailed. You're not angry?" Vela asked. The old doctor turned to face her. "Nurse Vela, I have been practicing medicine for 112 years. Do you know how many mistakes I have made in that time?" Vela shook her head. "Many. More than I can count. Every doctor and nurse makes mistakes. That is part of learning." He gestured at the screen. "What matters is what you do after the mistake. You could have hidden this. You could have pretended it never happened. Instead, you chose to learn. You chose to understand. And now you have discovered something that could help patients all across the galaxy." Vela felt tears forming in her eyes. She had expected anger and punishment. She had not expected this. "Humans are a mystery to most species in the Galactic Union," Dr. Verith continued. "We treat them like we treat everyone else, and we are surprised when our treatments fail or have unexpected results. But you have begun to unlock that mystery. You have begun to understand what makes humans different." He placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "This research should not stay hidden in a laboratory. It should be shared with the entire medical community. With your permission, I would like to help you publish it." Vela looked at her data, at all the impossible stories of human survival, at the proof that Marcus Chun had turned a deadly poison into medicine. "Yes," she said. "I would like that very much." Dr. Verith smiled. It was a warm, grandfatherly smile that made Vela feel safe for the first time in days. "Good," he said. "Then let us begin. We have much work to do." And with those words, Vela's journey truly began. She was no longer just a nurse who had made a terrible mistake. She was becoming a pioneer, a researcher, a scientist who would help the galaxy understand the most impossible species it had ever encountered. The humans who refused to die. Vela did not sleep that night. She could not sleep. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the warning message flashing on her datapad. Every time she started to relax, her heart would race again with fresh terror. She sat in her small cabin, staring at the wall, waiting for the alarm, waiting for someone to discover what she had done, waiting for Marcus Chen to finally start dying, hours after he should have been dead. But the alarm never came. When her next shift started, Vela walked to the medical bay with slow, heavy steps. She expected to find chaos. She expected to find doctors running around, trying to save a dying patient. She expected to find security officers waiting to arrest her. Instead, she found Marcus Chen sitting up in his bed, eating breakfast. He looked up when she entered and gave her a friendly wave. "Hey, it's you. The nurse from last night. Feeling better today?" Vela stopped walking. She stared at him like he was a creature from another dimension. In a way, he was. "How are you alive?" she asked. Her voice came out small and weak. Marcus shrugged. "I don't know. I just am." He took another bite of his food, which appeared to be some kind of protein paste. "This stuff is terrible, by the way. Do all hospital ships serve food this bad?" Vela walked closer, checking the monitors around his bed. His vital signs were not just stable. They were better than yesterday. His heart rate was strong and steady. His blood pressure was perfect. His oxygen levels were higher than normal for a human. "This makes no sense," she muttered. "What makes no sense?" Marcus asked. Vela hesitated. She had already confessed to him last night. She had told him that she had given him poison. But he had been half asleep then. Maybe he did not remember. Maybe she could pretend it never happened. But that felt wrong. She had made a terrible mistake, and she needed to understand what had happened. She needed to know how this human had survived something that should have killed him instantly. "The compound I injected you with last night," she said slowly. "Zeta 7. It is used to treat silicone-based species. For carbon-based species like you, it is deadly. It breaks down organic cells at the molecular level. No carbon-based species has ever survived a full dose. Marcus put down his food and looked at her with more serious attention. You told me this last night. You said I should be dead. You should be. You should have died within 10 minutes of the injection. But you didn't. You're not just alive. You're healthier than you were yesterday. Vela shook her head. I've been a nurse for only 6 months, but I studied xenobiology for years. Nothing in my education explains this. Marcus was quiet for a moment. Then he looked at his arm, where the injection had been given. The skin was slightly red, but there was no other sign that anything unusual had happened. Can I be honest with you? He asked. Vela nodded. This isn't the first time something like this has happened to me. When I was young, maybe 12 years old, I got sick with a fever. The doctors said it was just a normal childhood illness. But my fever got very high. It went past the point where brain damage should start. My parents were terrified. But after 3 days, the fever broke, and I was fine. Better than fine, actually. I never got sick with that particular illness again. He leaned back against his pillows. When I was 25, I was in a shuttle accident. The hull cracked, and I was exposed to space for almost 2 minutes before rescue arrived. No suit, no protection. Just me in the vacuum. He tapped his chest. I should have died. My lungs should have exploded. My blood should have boiled. But I survived. I had some frostbite and some burst blood vessels in my eyes, but I was walking and talking within a week. Vela listened with growing amazement. She had heard stories about human resilience, but she had always thought they were exaggerations. Myths that humans told to make themselves seem more impressive. 2 years ago, Marcus continued, I was poisoned by an assassin. Someone put a toxin in my drink that should have stopped my heart within seconds. I got sick. Very sick. I was unconscious for 3 days. But I woke up, and the doctor said my body had somehow broken down the poison and turned it into something harmless. He looked at Vela with a strange expression. It was not pride or arrogance. It was something closer to confusion, mixed with acceptance. I don't know why I'm like this, he said. I don't know why my body refuses to die when it should. I've met other humans who have similar stories. We don't understand it ourselves. We just know that we're very hard to kill. Vela sat down on the edge of his bed. Her legs felt weak. Her whole body felt weak. On my planet, she said, if a Deshan is exposed to the same poison twice, they die faster the second time. Our bodies become more sensitive to threats, not less. The idea that a body could become resistant to something that tried to kill it. That goes against everything I was taught. Marcus nodded slowly. I've talked to xenobiologists about this. They have some theories. They say humans evolved on a very dangerous planet. Earth has thousands of diseases, predators, and natural disasters. The humans who survived were the ones whose bodies could adapt and overcome. Over millions of years, that ability became part of our basic biology. Adapt and overcome, Vela repeated. The words felt strange on her tongue. It's not magic, Marcus said. It's just evolution. Humans are generalists. We're not the fastest or strongest or the smartest species in the galaxy, but we're very good at not dying. Our bodies treat every threat as a problem to be solved. And usually, they find a solution. Vela thought about this for a long time. The medical bay continued its quiet routine around them. Other nurses checked on other patients. Machines beeped and hummed. The universe continued as if nothing extraordinary had happened. But something extraordinary had happened. Vela had given a patient a lethal dose of poison, and instead of dying, he had gotten healthier. What should I do now? She asked. It was a question for herself as much as for him. Marcus smiled. Well, you could report yourself and face whatever punishment your system gives you. Or you could keep this between us and use it as a learning experience. Make sure you never grab the wrong vial again. That's it. You're not angry? Why would I be angry? I'm fine. Better than fine. He stretched his arms above his head. Actually, I think I might be ready to leave the medical bay early. I feel great. Layla looked at her datapad. According to the computer, Marcus Chun should have been dead for over 12 hours. According to reality, he was asking to be released early because he felt too healthy to stay in bed. She made a decision in that moment. She would not report herself. Not because she was afraid of punishment, but because she realized that this experience had taught her something more valuable than any classroom lecture. Humans were different. Humans were impossible. And if she wanted to be a good nurse, she needed to understand them better. I need to study you, she said. Marcus raised an eyebrow. Study me? Your blood, your cells, your immune system. I need to understand how you survived. If I can understand that, maybe I can help other patients. Maybe I can develop better treatments for humans. Marcus thought about this for a moment. Then he nodded. Okay, but you have to promise me one thing. What? He grinned. Get me some better food. This protein paste is going to kill me faster than any poison. Vela felt something she had not felt since the accident. She felt a small smile forming on her face. I will try, she said. But I cannot promise anything. Hospital food is terrible everywhere in the galaxy. And so began an unlikely partnership between a young alien nurse who had made a terrible mistake and a human who refused to die. Neither of them knew it yet, but this was only the beginning of a journey that would change both of their lives forever. Marcus Chen was released from the medical bay on the 5th day after the accident. His wounds from the pirate attack had healed completely. The doctors had no explanation for why he had recovered so fast, but Vela knew. She had watched his cells rebuild themselves with the help of the very poison that should have destroyed them. On the day he left, Marcus came to find her. She was in the observation deck staring out at the stars. It had become her favorite place to think. There you are, he said, settling into the seat next to her. I wanted to say goodbye before I ship out. Vela turned to look at him. In the 5 days since the accident, they had formed a strange kind of friendship. She had taken his blood samples and scanned his body and asked him hundreds of questions about his life. He had answered everything with patience and good humor. He had never once blamed her for what she had done. Where will you go now? She asked. Back to my ship. The repairs are finished, and my crew is waiting for me. He stretched his legs out and looked at the stars. We have a cargo run to the outer colonies. Nothing exciting. Just the usual work. Vela was quiet for a moment. She had been thinking about something for days, and she was not sure how to say it. I have to confess something to you, she said finally. Marcus raised an eyebrow. Another confession? What did you inject me with this time? She did not smile at his joke. When I first realized what I had done, when I thought I had killed you, my first thought was not about you. It was about myself. I was afraid of losing my career. I was afraid of facing punishment. I was afraid of what my family would think. She looked down at her hands. I was selfish. I am sorry for that. Marcus was quiet for a long moment. Then he spoke in a soft voice that surprised her. Can I tell you a story? Vela nodded. When I was young, maybe 16 years old, I made a terrible mistake. I was working on my father's ship, helping with repairs. There was a power coupling that needed to be replaced. I thought I knew how to do it. I didn't ask for help. I just did it myself. He paused, his eyes distant with memory. I made an error. A stupid, careless error. The coupling overloaded and caused an explosion. 3 crew members were injured. One of them, a woman named Sarah, lost her arm. She was a pilot. Flying was her whole life. And because of my mistake, she could never fly the same way again. Vela listened in silence. She had not expected this. I wanted to hide what I had done. I wanted to blame the equipment or say it was an accident that no one could have prevented. But my father found out the truth. He sat me down and he said something I have never forgotten. Marcus looked at Vela. He said, "Marcus, being responsible means facing the consequences of your actions, even when it hurts. But being truly responsible means learning from your mistakes so that you never make them again. The first kind of responsibility is about punishment. The second kind is about growth." He leaned back in his chair. "I could have reported you. I could have made sure you faced official punishment for what happened. Maybe you would have lost your job. Maybe you would have faced criminal charges. Would that have helped anyone?" Vela thought about this. "I don't know. I do. It wouldn't have helped anyone. You made a mistake because the vials looked similar in dim light. That's a design problem, not a moral failure. The real question is, what did you do after the mistake?" "I tried to understand," Vela said quietly. "I tried to learn." Marcus smiled. "And what did you learn?" "So much." Vela felt energy rising in her chest as she spoke. "I learned that human biology is completely different from what I was taught. I learned that your immune systems can adapt to almost any threat. I learned that the medical protocols we use for other species might be wrong for humans. I learned that studying humans could help us develop better treatments for everyone." That's what I thought. Marcus nodded with satisfaction. "You took a terrible mistake and turned it into something valuable. That's the second kind of responsibility my father talked about. That's growth." Vela felt tears in her eyes again. She had cried more in the past 5 days than she had in years. "I don't deserve your forgiveness," she said. "I almost killed you." "Almost," Marcus repeated. "But you didn't. And honestly, I think this might have been good for me. The doctor said my cellular regeneration rate has increased by 15% since the accident. Whatever that Zeta-7 did to my system, it made me stronger." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small metal object. It was a patch, the kind that spaceship crews wore on their uniforms. This one showed a stylized image of a ship flying through a ring of stars. "This is my ship's emblem," he said, handing it to her. "I want you to have it, to remember that mistakes don't have to define us. What we do after the mistake is what matters." Vela took the patch carefully. It was warm from being in his pocket. "I will keep it always," she said. Marcus stood up and stretched. "I should go. My crew will wonder where I am." He looked down at her with a warm expression. "Keep studying. Keep learning. And when you publish your research, make sure to include a note about that one human test subject who helped you figure it all out." Vela laughed despite herself. "I will, but I will not include the part about how I accidentally poisoned you. Probably for the best." Marcus grinned. It might make other humans nervous about visiting the medical bay. He walked toward the door, then stopped and turned back one more time. "Vela, one more thing." "Yes?" "If you ever have questions about humans, if you ever need a test subject for your research, or if you just want to talk, send me a message. I'll answer." He smiled. "After all, you're the first person who ever tried to kill me and then apologized for it. That makes us friends in a weird sort of way." Vela watched him leave. The door closed behind him, and she was alone again with the stars. She looked at the patch in her hand. It was a simple thing, just a piece of metal with a design stamped into it. But it meant more to her than any medical degree or official commendation. It was proof that she could make terrible mistakes and still move forward. It was proof that forgiveness was possible, even when you did not deserve it. It was proof that the universe was stranger and more wonderful than she had ever imagined. She put the patch in her pocket and went back to work. There was so much more to learn, so many more questions to answer, so many more humans to study, and she was finally ready to begin. That night, Vela sent her first research paper to the Galactic Medical Journal. It was titled Adaptive Immune Response in Human Physiology, a case study in toxin reversal. She did not mention the accident. She did not mention her mistake. But anyone who read the paper carefully would understand that something unusual had happened on the starship Serenity's Promise. Something that had turned a frightened young nurse into a scientist. Something that had turned a deadly poison into a gift. Something that had proven, once again, that humans were the most impossible species in the galaxy. And Vela was just beginning to understand why. 2 years had passed since the night Vela gave Marcus Chun the wrong injection. In that time, everything had changed. Vela was no longer a junior nurse working night shifts in a quiet medical bay. She was now the head of human medical research aboard the Serenity's Promise. Her papers had been read by doctors across the galaxy. Her protocols for treating human patients had been adopted by hundreds of medical facilities. She had given lectures at universities, trained other nurses, and answered thousands of questions from confused doctors who could not understand why their human patients kept refusing to die. She had become, without really meaning to, one of the galaxy's leading experts on human biology. But she never forgot how it all started. She kept Marcus Chun's patch in her pocket every single day. Whenever she felt proud of her accomplishments, she would touch it and remember. Remember the fear. Remember the mistake. Remember the lesson. One evening, she was working late in her laboratory when her communication device made a soft, chiming sound. She looked at the screen and felt a warm smile spread across her face. Thought it was a message from Marcus Chen. That she had not seen him in person since he left the ship 2 years ago, but they had stayed in contact. He sent her messages every few weeks, updating her on his travels and adventures. Sometimes he would share stories about injuries or illnesses that should have killed him but didn't. Each story became a new data point in her research. This message was different, though. It was not a story. It was an invitation. Vela, the message read, I have been promoted to captain. My own ship, my own crew. We're doing our first official mission next month, and I want you to be there for the launch ceremony. You're the reason I'm still alive to receive this promotion. It seems only right that you should see it happen. Vela read the message 3 times. Then she began making arrangements to attend. The launch ceremony took place at the Union's main starport, a massive station that floated in the space between 3 star systems. Thousands of beings from hundreds of species filled the observation deck, watching as the new starship was presented to its captain. Vela stood in the crowd, feeling small and nervous. She was not used to such large gatherings. She preferred her quiet laboratory, her research, her data. But when Marcus Chen walked onto the stage, she forgot all her nervousness. He looked older than she remembered. There were lines on his face that had not been there before, and gray streaks in his dark hair. But his eyes were the same, warm and kind and full of that strange human quality that she had come to think of as stubborn hope. He gave a short speech about duty and exploration and the importance of working together across species boundaries. It was a good speech, but Vela barely heard it. She was watching his face, remembering the night when she had stood over his bed, waiting for him to die. After the ceremony, Marcus found her in the crowd. He pushed through the mass of well-wishers and dignitaries until he was standing in front of her. You came, he said. Simply, of course I came. Vela reached into her pocket and pulled out the patch he had given her 2 years ago. She held it up so he could see. I still carry this. Every day. Marcus looked at the patch, then at her face. For a moment, his eyes were bright with emotion. "I heard about your work," he said. "Everyone has heard about your work. You've changed how the entire galaxy thinks about human medicine." Vela shook her head. "I just ask questions. Humans are the ones who keep providing impossible answers." Marcus laughed. It was a good laugh, full of life and warmth. "That's what we do. We're too stubborn to accept that anything is impossible." They talked for a long time after that. Marcus told her about his new ship and his new crew. Vela told him about her research and her plans for the future. They talked about the night that had brought them together, about the mistake that had turned into a discovery, about the fear that had transformed into knowledge. Finally, as the celebration was ending and people were beginning to leave, Marcus asked her a question. "What's next for you, Vela? Where does the great human expert go from here?" Vela thought about this for a moment. "I want to train others," she said. "I want to create a new generation of medical professionals who understand humans, who don't treat them like ordinary patients, who expect the impossible and prepare for it." Marcus nodded slowly. "That sounds like a worthy goal. It will not be easy. Many doctors are set in their ways. They believe what they were taught, even when the evidence shows them something different. Changing minds is harder than changing bodies. But you'll do it anyway." It was not a question. Marcus said it like a statement of fact, like he already knew the answer. Vela smiled. "Yes, I will do it anyway, because that is what I learned from you. That is what humans teach everyone they meet. You do not give up. You do not accept defeat. You keep trying until you succeed, no matter how impossible it seems." Marcus reached out and took her hand. His grip was warm and strong. "You know what? I think you would make a good human. Is that a compliment?" "The highest compliment I know how to give." They stood together in silence for a moment. Two beings from different worlds who had been brought together by a mistake. A nurse who had tried to kill a patient and a patient who had refused to die. A friendship built on fear and transformed by forgiveness. The celebration ended. The crowds went home. Marcus returned to his new ship, ready to begin his first mission as captain. Val returned to her laboratory, ready to continue her work. But something had changed for both of them. They had been reminded why they did what they did. They had been reminded that mistakes could become miracles, that fear could become knowledge, that strangers could become family. 3 weeks later, Vela received another message from Marcus. This one was short and simple. "Just survived a radiation leak that should have killed the whole crew. Nobody died. Thought you might want to add this to your research files. Also, I think I can see colors better now. Is that possible?" Vela laughed out loud, alone in her laboratory. Then she opened a new file in her research database and began typing. Case Study 847. Human exposure to high levels of cosmic radiation. Expected outcome: death within 24 hours. Actual outcome: enhanced color perception and mild headache. Subject reports feeling pretty good, actually. She saved the file and leaned back in her chair. Still smiling. Humans, the most impossible species in the galaxy, and she was honored to spend her life trying to understand them. In the years that followed, Vela trained hundreds of nurses and doctors. She wrote dozens of papers. She gave countless lectures. She became famous throughout the Galactic Union as the definitive expert on human biology. But whenever anyone asked her how she had started her career, she would just smile and say, "I made a mistake. And then I learned from it." She never told anyone the full truth. She never revealed that she had once given a patient a lethal poison and watched him survive. Some secrets were too precious to share with strangers, but in her pocket, she always carried a small metal patch, a reminder of the human who had forgiven her, A reminder of the night that had changed everything. A reminder that in a universe full of impossible things, the most impossible thing of all was hope. And humans, she had learned, were made of nothing but hope.